Okay, so I know I promised this video like a long time ago. I think I had originally wanted it to come out in July, and it is now September. Sorry about that, but here it is, finally, my Pixar ranking video. I'm ranking all Pixar films. I watched all of them throughout late May and June, and I finished it all by watching Inside Out 2, which came out this year, the most recent Pixar movie to come out at the time of this recording. And the reason it took so long to get this video out was because I got busy with some stuff, including moving into like the place I'm staying at for my junior year of college. Here it is, I showed it off in a short. Get ready to see this location more in upcoming videos and probably videos that I've already released before this. And also, earlier I got sick in the week I was going to start recording this, so my bad about that. And another thing that happened is Pixar was in the news recently for quite a few things. There was, of course, the release of Inside Out 2, which is doing really well, highest grossing animated film right now. Let's see, of all time, I believe, beating the live action Lion King. There was like the layoffs that happened at Pixar. That was not awesome. There was Pete Docter's quote about Pixar wanting to do more like you know, films that appeal to mass audiences rather than autobiographical type films like Turning Red and Elemental. Did not love that. And also D23 showed off some movies, you know, that we're gonna see, including Hoppers, which looks really fun and is directed by the creator of We Bare Bears. Super excited for that. And also Elio is supposed to come out sometime. It was supposed to come out this year, I think. But regardless, a lot of stuff, and so it kind of changed the way I want to go about this video. And then it didn't, and then it did again. Point is, the video, like, you know, a lot happened, but now here we are. I'm gonna be ranking all the Pixar films. This is my opinion, of course. If you have a different opinion, let me know in the comments. I would comments. I would love to hear what's your favorite Pixar films and your least favorites. But like, you know, enough diddly daddling. Let's go ahead and get to it. This is my ranking of all 28 currently out at this moment Pixar films. Okay, I don't have any other Pixar related like figures or toys. That's the only thing I have, the little Funko mini like tin toy from one of their shorts. Should I get the Rebel Tech Toy Story figures? I've seen those online and I think like those look pretty good. I kind of want to get those. Are those good? Let me know. But yeah, so just get ready to see that little tin toy every like, you know, throughout the video. Well, at the very bottom of the list we have Lightyear, which I did a video on back in July because I just had a lot to say about it. So I was just like, instead of waiting for the ranking video, I'm gonna go ahead and get all my feelings out then. That way I don't have to spend too much on the, you know, when talking about it in the ranking. So if you want some more detailed opinions on this film, go ahead and check that one out. But in summary, I think this is my least favorite Pixar film because it is such a nothing film. It is like, it honestly could have been great. There was some good potential here. Like, this could have been to Pixar what Atlantis the Lost Empire was to Disney. Something like that was different from what they normally made, and like have this like really cool sci-fi adventure film. But like, no, everything here kind of feels like your kind of generic sci-fi, some cool ideas, but not really executed all that interestingly. And Buzz Lightyear himself as a character is like fine. Like the performance by, you know, by Chris Evans, yeah, I forgot the name for a second, is like pretty good. But at the same time, I kind of wish he played it more like the Tim Allen Buzz Lightyear. In fact, that Buzz Lightyear from the first Toy Story film doesn't really act like the Buzz Lightyear from this film, or at least it doesn't really feel like he would come from this movie. If you want like a better like Buzz Lightyear standalone adventure, then go ahead and watch like the cartoon series, which I actually did watch a little bit of after watching this movie, and I think it's pretty good. And like, yeah, this movie overall is not like a movie I downright hate. I just feel like there were some good ideas in there, but like, it's overall just kind of nothing. Like, I didn't really feel anything while watching it. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, I guess this exists. And like, yeah, I honestly wish it was better because it could have been cool. It genuinely could have been cool. But yeah, because of all that, it's my least favorite Pixar film. Next up on the list is Brave, which it had been quite a while since I last saw it, and then when I rewatched it for this ranking, I actually found myself kind of liking it more than the last time I did, even though I still don't love it. I still don't even think it's all that amazing. As you can see, it's like literally second to last on the list. But I'll start with what I like. I think the main emotional core with Merida and her mom trying to, like, you know, get along and her helping her become not a bear anymore, I think, you know, it's pretty good. It's nothing grand or anything, but like the few emotional moments with those two, I think are pretty solid. There are some funny jokes here and there. The animation is still pretty quality, and you know, there's some neat looking moments, and like I think that's kind of about it. What the other things I don't really like about the movie is just everything that tries to make it like the movie feel more like a Disney film rather than a Pixar film, or what Pixar was making at the time beforehand. It just feels like, like it copies a lot of elements that I had seen in prior Disney films. Like, oh, you got the female protagonist who's a princess, but she doesn't need no man in her life. She wants to be on her own. And I'm not saying I hate that type of character. I'm just saying that I have seen that quite a bit in here. It just doesn't feel like all that different from things I've seen before. Just wish they could have made her a bit more interesting. And also, it takes elements from Brother Bear, sort of, which, strange choice. And everything about it just kind of gives off the vibe of like it trying to be more of like, at the time where Disney was making more films that felt more Pixar-esque, this one felt like Pixar trying to make a more Disney-esque film. And I'm not trying to gatekeep what kind of stories Pixar can tell. They can tell whatever they want. I'm just saying, as a viewer, I just kind of wish they added their fun Pixar spin to it, and they probably could have, honestly. Like, if you look at the development of this movie, you see that the original director was fired, they scrapped a bunch of ideas and whatnot, and, maybe this movie could have been great if they just followed that original director's vision, but as it is, it's still, like, a fine enough movie. I think it has some good moments in it. I just don't, really love it, and it just feels kind of, like, generic-esque Disney, and, I just kind of wish they did something more interesting. The Good Dinosaur, I think, is a movie that I kind of like slightly more than Brave, but it also has some of the same issues where I also feel like it feels a little too generic-esque to make it, interesting enough for me to go like, oh, hey, I really like this. I just kind of go like, it's alright. This movie is supposed to take place in like a future where dinosaurs never went extinct, so they've been around for a long time, and you think like, oh man, that's gonna be super cool. I wonder if it's gonna be like that show Dinosaurs, where they have like a society and everything. That should be cool. But no, dinosaurs are just still on the planet, they're like, everything's still like woods or nature, and they have like small farms, so you can even call those farms. I think they're farms, but like nothing too grand. If anything, there are actually like less dinosaurs here than you would expect. Like we see barely any, and so this honestly feels more like a story of like dinosaurs about to go extinct rather than dinosaurs who have been around for like a long time or never went extinct. And I just feel like, that's kind of lame. In fact, the whole concept of dinosaurs had never went extinct just kind of feels like an afterthought, something they added in later to make the story seem more interesting than it really is. Because as it is, if you just said that this just took place in the past, or like an alternate past where humans also existed alongside dinosaurs, then I would say yeah, that makes sense. I can see that. But anyway, the movie follows Arlo, and he has to, after getting lost from his family in the woods after a big rainstorm, he befriends, I don't know why I can't speak, this human named Spot who acts like a dog, kind of like a reverse of the animal-human relationship that we see in other movies, where the human in this time around acts more like an animal, which is kind of cute, I guess. And they have some cute moments together, and there are some other moments that I think are pretty cool. I actually kind of like the cartoony dinosaur designs. I know they don't really fit the hyper-realistic settings, but I don't know, I kind of like that. And the hyper-realistic settings themselves are really good. They did a really good job. They look photo-realistic, animation-wise. It looks incredible. But a lot of the other characters that they meet are not that interesting. I don't care for the pterodactyl villains. The concept of nature being their biggest enemy, I think, is pretty interesting. I kind of wish they did more with that. But as it is, I think the movie itself is, just kind of okay. Just feels also pretty generic and not the most interesting. But I put it above Brave because it has dinosaurs, and I guess dinosaurs is more interesting than Scottish people. I mean, no, I shouldn't have said that. Cut that out. I'm probably gonna forget to cut this out. Alright, some of you might be wondering, David, why is this not at the very bottom? This is the worst Pixar film, and to an extent, I agree. This is, from a certain point of view, the worst Pixar film. It is definitely worse than Lightyear, Brave, and The Good Dinosaur, but the reason I have it higher up than those films is because I can. This is my list. I'm kidding. The reason is because I kind of still enjoyed it. Weirdly enough, when rewatching all these Pixar films, the Cars franchise is the one that I've gotten the most appreciation from rewatching them, or at least more appreciation for them. And that, it goes to Cars 2. I remember liking it a lot as a kid because I was dumb and I liked the Cars toys that I had, and then not liking it later on when I realized, oh yeah, it's actually kind of dumb. But as time went on, and especially on this rewatch, I kind of enjoyed it in a, it's a funny bad kind of way. I think it is ridiculous that they took away the emotional core from the first one, or at least almost completely abandoned it, which is supposed to be lightning. you know, realizing there's more to life than just racing, and like he can like have friends with people that he kind of looked down upon before. I don't know, I couldn't speak there. And that could have been a thing that could have carried over into this next one, where it starts out with like Lightning bringing those two worlds, you know, those two worlds of his collide, his racing world and his Radiator Springs world, when he like invites them over to like specifically Mater to hang out with him during like the big race. And he is at first embarrassed of him, like, you know, and because he kind of acts like a fool, and like that could have been an interesting thing to explore more, like him trying to have those worlds intersect with each other, even though they're so wildly different. It would have been a good like continuation of the themes from the first film, but no, instead it becomes a spy film. Mater, the comic relief, is now the main character, and it's a spy thriller and all that stuff. It is ridiculous, and a lot of the humor is not all that funny, but like, I don't know, I still find myself enjoying it, and you know, the fact that it's kind of funny bad. And another thing that makes this movie kind of funnier for me is the fact that a lot of people say this with the Cars movies, that they don't really need to be cars. Like, this, it's not something that really adds to it. It's just like, oh yeah, I guess that's like part of the world building, and everyone asks, why are they cars? Like, why do they need to be cars? Cars 2 is the only movie in the Cars franchise that I can actively like say with the fact that their cars is integral to the story. It really is. Like, the whole villain plot is that he puts the explosive gasoline or whatever into the racers, and they die when they hit a specific speed. And like the lemon cars are like the main bad guys, where they like you know, hate that people look down upon them for being lemon cars and all that stuff. It's like, I just think it's kind of funny that no, out of all the 3 Cars movies, this is the one where the fact that their cars is the most important. And yeah, so I don't know, that is funny to me. And like, you know, overall, this is definitely not a good movie, but like, I still kind of enjoyed it, which is why I'm gonna put it higher up than those other 3 movies I talked about. A Bug's Life is definitely a Pixar movie that I never actually hear anyone say is one of their favorites. I'm sure someone out there would say that, I just haven't met them. And that includes me. I would not say this is one of my favorites. Even as a kid, even though I would watch it a lot as a kid, I would always just go like, oh, that was good, but I would not call it one of my favorites. And that's the reason why it's pretty low on the list. However, I do not think it's bad in any sense. This is Pixar's second film after Toy Story, and Toy Story is a fantastic film, a huge success, and it was a tough act to follow that. And yeah, while they didn't do an amazing job following that, some parts of it even kind of feel like they're trying to repeat the success of Toy Story a little bit. I still think this was a cute enough movie, you know? And some people might see that as like a negative, or like not the best compliment to give, calling something cute, but I think this movie's cute. I don't know what else to say. There's some things that I quite like some of the things they do with the bug societies, like the Bug City, Circus, and the Ant Colony. You know, that's pretty good, I think. I like some of the characters, like Flick is a pretty good main protagonist, Dot is cute, Princess Ada, voiced by Elaine from Seinfeld, is also pretty good, and I like the Queen. The circus bugs, however, are kind of where I like sort of go, I don't know if I really like all of you guys. I don't hate anyone, but some of them I just kind of like don't think are the most memorable. Like, I remember some things like, oh yeah, there's a mantis, there's a butterfly, there's a stick bug, you know? There's like one, like a big one, like a dung beetle or something, I don't know. There's the roly-polies. Yeah, all that stuff. And Francis, the ladybug, I remember him, you know? He's probably the most memorable to me. And it kind of, like, when I see them, it kind of gives me the vibe of, like, oh, they kind of want to do what they did with the first Toy Story and have, like, this kind of big ensemble cast, you know, right? And, you know, a lot of them are voiced by celebrities type of thing. But, like, you know, I don't think they're as memorable as the Toy Story cast. Like, I don't remember them as fondly as I do, like, Mr. Potato Head, Slinky, Bo Peep, Rex, Ham, all that stuff. But then I remember, yeah, but Toy Story got, like, 3 sequels? And like, or 4 soon, and Bug's Life only has 1 movie, so I don't know, maybe if we ever had gotten a Bug's Life 2, even buggier, then like, maybe they could have been fleshed out more, but you know, still, like, I think the circus bugs, some of them are alright, but they're not like the best to me. I actually quite like, though, the villain of the movie. Like, sure, Hopper is voiced by Kevin Spacey, who I very much do not like, but as a villain, I actually think he works really well. He has some really good moments in this, you know, some threatening moments, and I quite like him as a villain. And overall, like, the movie is cute, you know? I don't know how else to describe it other than it's a cute film. I don't like the liar reveal plot, but like, other than that, everything else about it works pretty well. Some funny jokes, some cool things, some good things, I mean, and overall, just a cute movie. I remember being really excited when Onward first came out. It was the first movie to start off the new decade for Pixar, 2020. This was really exciting because in the previous decade, the 2010s, they had good movies, but they were also putting a lot of emphasis on sequels and not really as many original movies as they used to before. And this, honestly, was exciting because it was a brand new original film, and then afterwards, we got a bunch of new original films. We got like Soul, we got Luca, we got Turning Red, we got Elemental. And then we got Lightyear, and then we're getting sequels again. We're still getting some originals, but getting more sequels again. So it was like, you know, it was nice while it lasted, that little mini renaissance. But I mean, I am excited for future Pixar films. But like, yes, this little mini renaissance started with Onward, and well, it definitely has some mixed reception. I definitely think, I would say, I liked it. I think the emotional core with the movie involving the two brothers, Ian and Bartley, trying to like, you know, bring back their dad for one day while they still have time, and going on this big like D&D style quest in this like fantasy world, I think is good. Like, I got attached to those characters and I wanted to see them succeed. And like, you know, when I saw like how like they were bonding over together, and then like, yeah, bro, the emotion, it does hit. And the final few moments were like, well, I won't spoil it, but like, you know, like it can get like pretty emotional, I think. My main like complaints with the movie are mostly just like things that I feel like, you know, was missed opportunities. Like the world, like the setting of the world, I think is interesting, where it's like this fantasy world where magic is basically gone, and like all the magical creatures like the goblins, elves, orcs, whatnot, they just kind of live in like normal society like us, and it's like, they're like, you know, it looks good, but I also feel like they could have done more to make the world like more visually interesting. But like what it is here, it's pretty good, I think. And like, you know, it's like, it kind of reminds me of that movie Bright, except it's actually good in that sense. And also, I think like, I don't dislike the celebrity casting of Tom Holland and Chris Pratt as the brothers. Like, Tom Holland does a pretty decent job, I think. However, Chris Pratt, well, I don't think he does a terrible job. It is kind of noticeably distracting, and like I just kind of feel like there could have been better choices. Like, I hear some people say Jack Black should have played Bartley. I agree, I would have liked that a bit more. And also, like, just the casting of basically the MCU Spider-Man and Star-Lord as the two main Pixar characters, like, you know, in this movie, feels a lot more like a marketing decision rather than like a genuine good casting decision. Again, although I do think they're good in the movie, it was kind of one of the first times I hear a casting for Pixar, and then you go, I think Disney, like the major Disney executives, had like a big say in that. Like, I know it's not the first time a Pixar movie had big celebrity casting in it, but like this one just kind of felt like, yeah, it was an executive decision, but they're still alright, I think. And overall, I do think the emotional stuff of this movie is really good, and I can definitely see why a lot of people would really like this movie because of that. So while I don't love everything about this film, I do think, you know, the emotion strikes in it, and you know, that's good. I like that. Cars 3, the final movie as of now in the Cars movie franchise. I have no idea if Pixar's gonna announce a fourth one just randomly one day, but right now it's the final of the trilogy we have so far. And I think this movie does a good job at going back to what I like about the movies. That is Lightning as a character. That's the main character. While I enjoyed Cars 2 more in an ironic way, I was upset that we didn't follow Lightning because I wanted to see his arc continue. And here, we do see it continue. We see that, I guess, he's older now, apparently. Like, he looks the exact same way that he did in the first one, but, you know, all the new cars are shinier, including Jackson Storm, who's his new rival in this. Lightning wants to beat him in a race. He wants to just continue racing, but people are telling him he's getting too old, and after a fatal crash, you know, right, like he thinks like it's over, but he decides to get back in the game with the help of his trainer, Cruz Ramirez. And while they're, you know, training, he also inadvertently becomes like a mentor to her and teaches her the ways about racing that he learned from Doc. And honestly, I think it works really well. I like Lightning's character in this movie a lot. I like seeing him like you know, like wanting to get back into racing and then becoming a mentor, much like how Doc became a mentor for him in the first one, kind of bringing that whole full circle. Like everything that he like, you know, disregarded about racing and driving before is now the stuff that he like says in this one. Like, it works really well, honestly. You know, the only things that don't work are just the things that don't entirely work about the Cars franchise in general. Like the whole, like, you know, things about the world just do not make sense if you think about it for too long. Like, how does this work if they're cars? Well, you know, all that stuff. You know, things like that. And also, I do feel like some of the other characters that we saw from the first one, like, you know, Sally and like the other, like, you know, characters from Radiator Springs, including Mater himself, are kind of just like, you know, not really in it that much, but like, you know, the lightning stuff and the cruiser mirror stuff is still really good. And I like how this was a nice like send up to Doc, who you know, whose voice actor unfortunately passed away quite a few years prior to this movie, and they actually used some old recordings of that they still had and put it in this movie, which I thought was pretty good. And yeah, Cars 3 is a really solid film, I think, and I quite enjoy it. It's a good ending for the Cars trilogy. I have no idea we'll get a Cars 4 though. Like I feel like that's something Pixar might just say, or Disney might just say for, you know, yeah, Cars 4 are happening. I don't know, but for now, yeah, this is a good way to end off the trilogy. Elemental had a really inspirational story back when it came out last year, where initially it wasn't doing that well on its opening weekend and everyone just thought it was going to be a box office bomb for Pixar, but as it continued being in theaters, it actually was able to get a good word of mouth and it was able to make its money back, and by the end of it, it was financially successful, and that was really cool. I was just like, man, you know, I was rooting for Elemental because I actually remember liking the movie when I first watched it. I was just like, yeah, you go, Elemental. I knew you could do it. And so yeah, movie studios, please just, you know, let movies be in theaters for the full amount they're supposed to be there, okay? Please. But anyway, yeah, Elemental. I rewatched it for this ranking, and I still quite like it. I think there's a lot of good stuff in this. I like the setting that the movie takes place in, this elemental city where the elements are all people. It looks really great. Like, I love the art, you know, the art for, you know, just the way the world looks, and the animation's very good. And I remember watching this movie and I just kind of thought, wow, this would make a really good setting for a 3D platformer game. I like the characters of Wade and Emperor a lot. I thought they were really cute, and you know, as the story was going along, I was just like, yeah, I hope these two get together. I'm rooting for them. And I also like the little autobiographical elements that Peter Son, the director, put in this. I like it when, like, you know, some of these recent Pixar movies that we've gotten have really put emphasis on like the director's own like autobiographical elements in there. Like Turning Red had that, Onward had that, which I talked about a little while ago, and Luca had it, you know, that kind of stuff. I know they've been in Pixar for a while now, but it's just, you know, really noticeable, I think, in these movies, and I think that's really cool. I hope they don't stop that with any future movies. But regardless, I think, you know, like, you know, I think just those personal elements help, you know, make the movie feel, you know, just a little, you know, a little more interesting to me. And I'm like, yeah, this, you know, I enjoy that. And if there's anything that I can, like, you know, say I don't love about the movie, is just that even though I said I was rooting for Wade and Ember to get together because I thought they were cute together, the story is essentially still kind of like your typical romantic movie or romantic comedy type of, you know, romance that, you know, there's nothing too different about it. It is still told well, but, you know, it's still not the most original thing out there. And, you know, yeah, so there's that. But other than that, I still think this is a pretty solid movie. And definitely, you know, I'm really glad to see how, you know, how it was able to be, you know, financially successful by the end of its run last year. So yeah, good. Incredibles 1 is, of course, a classic. You're gonna see that later on this list, you know, pretty higher up. I'm just gonna say it here. Well, this one, we had wanted an Incredible sequel for a long time, and 14 years later, we got one, Incredibles 2. When it first came out, it was a really big success, both financially and critically, but now people have kind of looked back on it and go like, I don't know, it's not really all that good. And me personally, while I don't like it as much as I used to when I first watched it, I still honestly think this is a pretty good movie. Not as good as the first one, but still a solid flick. I still like following the Parr family. The Parr family are great characters, and I like what they did with them in this movie. Like, I like seeing, like, Mrs. Incredible be the one to, like, take charge and, like, you know, be the superhero that's, like, the face for the whole thing that they're trying to do. I think it really fits well with what, like, the first movie did, where, like, it showed, like, oh, yeah, she's really good at, you know, being, you know, like, flexible, basically, and doing all that superhero stuff, and here we see her, like, she's the one getting the spotlight. And I like seeing Bob trying to take on a different role and be, like, the sort of, like, caretaker this time around, you know, like the stay-at-home dad, really, and, like, take care of the kids and all that, and seeing him to adjust to that, I think, is really good. I like Violet's sort of, like, regrets of, like, what the superhero life does to her personal life, and, you know, I think that's interesting to follow. Frozone is, of course, still great. The animation is very good in this movie, and the Michael Giacchino score, oh my god, it's still good. Michael Giacchino is my favorite, you know, composer for films, and, like, yeah, he's just, his score is fantastic in this. And like there are a few things that just make this movie, I feel like, just not as great as it really could have been. Like for example, I kind of don't entirely love that this takes place immediately after the first one. I mean, it was kind of cool when I first watched it. It was just like, oh wow, it takes place immediately. That's kind of cool. But like, I think like I was also kind of going like, it would have been still been nice if they aged him up though, you know? That would have been interesting, you know? And hope maybe they'll do that for Incredibles 3, which is happening. But for now, yeah, it was a little bit like, yeah. Would have been cool if, like, you know, this actually took place quite a bit, like, after the first one and they were actually all older, but still. And also, the villain in this movie is just not that great. No, I don't hate it. It's another twist villain, which is kind of lame. And, like, the social commentary that they have with the villain is kind of interesting, but, you know, the villain just does not have the same charm or charisma that, I think those are the same thing, that Syndrome had in the first one. But I would still say this was a good movie. I like the world of The Incredibles. I like the Parr family as characters, and it was really cool to just see more of that. Hopefully they can learn from what they did with this movie and actually give Incredibles 3 like the time it needs. This movie was a kind of rush near the end of it, so like that was not great. So hopefully they give however much time they need to craft a good movie with that. But for now, yeah, Incredibles 2, not as good as the first, but still very solid. Monsters University, a prequel to Monsters Inc., where Mike and Sully go to college. I don't know why, you know, who was necessarily asking for that, but I'm glad we got it because this is a pretty darn good movie. I like the world building that we get to the world of Monsters Inc., where we see where they get their education and where do they learn about all the things like the canisters and the doors and the scaring, and where do they put their student loans and then possibly get into crushing debt later in their life. You know, all that stuff. I think that's great. And I like how we follow, you know, Mike and Sully in this. They're a great duo in Monsters Inc., and here we see them go from rivals to friends and all that stuff, and we see how they form their iconic duo that we, you know, their dynamic that they have in the first Monsters Inc. There, you know, so that's all great. And I like a lot of the monster designs we see in this. Dean Hardscrabble, I think, is a cool design. I think she looks scary, but I also feel like she's out of place in the world of Monsters Inc., where, yeah, a lot of the other monsters look kind of freaky and scary when they need to, but they also look kind of like, you know, funny and cartoony, and she just looks something like that would be in a genuine, like, kind of horror story, and I'm like, you know, it just feels a little out of place, even though I do think that's probably the vibe they were going for, since she was supposed to be like the strict dean who's supposed to be, you know, kind of scary to the others, but whatever. Still, I think she's pretty neat. You know, I think there's well, maybe not a lot, but still some good jokes here, even if it's not as funny as the first Monsters Inc. But what I think really makes this movie, like, interesting for me to watch is Mike's story in this, where he tries so hard to be a scary. That's what he wants to do. That's what he's dreamt all his life of doing, but he just does not have it in him. Like, he doesn't have that sauce to be a scary. He just isn't that scary to other people. Even though I think that's a little bit weird, because if I saw Mike in real life, I'd probably like crap my pants in fear, but like still, you know, I guess other people don't find him scary, and that's something that he kind of has to accept. But when he meets up with Sully, he kind of learns the aspects of like Terry that he's good at, like teaching and like, you know, guiding and all that stuff. And that, you know, that's how Mike and Sully form that dynamic where they can help each other out. And I think that's really cool. There's been a lot of movies that have said that, like, hey, if you're not good at something, you just gotta keep working hard and never give up and you'll be good at that thing, which is definitely a good message to send. But there's also something really cool about this movie's message that says that, like, hey, even if you work really hard at something, you might just not be capable of doing it no matter how hard you try. But that doesn't mean there aren't other things surrounding that thing that you can't be good at instead. Like, you know, maybe there's something else that you should give a try. And I think that's also a really important message to send to people, especially kids, you know, right? It's not like saying you should give up. It's like saying, like, hey, maybe it's okay to accept that you may not be good at this thing, but there could be something else, you know, which is honestly really good. I like it. And yeah, and the other things regarding the movie, like some of the other characters, and I just kind of don't love all of them, not as favorable. Like some of the Luz McCampa, you know, characters, especially Art. I kind of really do not like Art. No, I don't hate him, but like I just don't like him. And the movie also has kind of the typical, like, oh, college film, like, you know, college film cliches that, like, you know, is kind of enjoyable to watch, you know, right? It's like, oh yeah, it's funny seeing Pixar make like a college film, but like still, it's like, you know, I kind of like some of these other aspects of the story more, like the Mike and Sully stuff and like the message. But still, Monsters University, while not as good as the first one, is still a really fun film, and I think there's a lot of good stuff behind it. So yeah, it's a good. Okay, so I think when people talk about what is the best era for Pixar, everyone usually starts with like, oh, their original 1995 to 2010, where people will be like, yeah, like there's good stuff in the 2010s and even now in the 2020s, but there's also a few more, some duds here and there, or like not so great stuff that are like movies that people generally agree are like not as good as they could be. But for me, I always say that, like, I think when we talk about consistency, like, I think every movie has been a banger. It wouldn't be starting from 1995 because then you would also include A Bug's Life, which I feel, while I still like it, I think it's cute, I also don't think it's anything spectacular. So the only, like, real two bangers from the 90s would be Toy Story and Toy Story 2. But for me, I think the best era for Pixar, or the best era for really any animation studio ever, where we talk about consistent quality for releasing classic, is 2001 to 2010, which includes Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Cars, that's right, I'm including Cars, Ratatouille, WALL-E, Up, and Toy Story 3. And I'm mentioning that I say I'm including Cars because some people will usually go like, oh yeah, that's like a pretty weak Pixar film, honestly, from that era, or like something like that. But like, no, I stand by when I say I think it is a classic. Obviously not as good as movies that would like come out before or after it. As you can see, it's still pretty low on the list. It's number 18, but I still really like this movie. I liked it a lot as a kid, and even rewatching it now, I still really like it. There's of course things that are pretty silly about it, like the world of Cars does not really make sense when you think about it a lot, and there's also some like some kind of lowbrow jokes in this, but I still think what works in this movie really, really works. Like I said, Lightning McQueen as a character. I think he has a great arc in this where he starts off very douchey and like cares about racing, but really only about the fame and winning. But when he gets to Radiator Springs, he becomes more humbled. He learns to let other people into his life when he didn't really have many friends before, or any friends at all. Now he has like a whole a little group of friends that he has here. When he grows like a strong bond with Mater, their friendship is really good. There's the little like flirty stuff that he has with Sally is also good, and she teaches him a thing or two about slowing down and appreciating just everything around him. And Doc, the stuff he has with Doc is great, right? Him being an accidental mentor to him at first, and then actually wanting to be a mentor for him is really good. Where like in this time, instead of learning about slowing down and taking things appreciating what's all around you, Doc teaches him like the fundamentals of racing, like the true artistry of it. Not just about like the fame or anything like that, just what is actually great about it. And I think Lightning really grows in this, and it's great. And the movie, I like a lot of the characters in Radiator Springs. Mater is great, Sally's great, the fire truck is great, I don't know why I forgot his name, but Ramon, Flo, Luigi, they're all amazing. I just really like this movie, honestly, and yeah, I have a lot of fond memories of it because I watched it as a kid, but even now, I still think it works. Yes, the Cars franchise is stupid, and the world doesn't really make sense, but when it comes to like the character stuff with Lightning, I think it really works. And I genuinely want to make like a Cars retrospective someday. I mentioned that a little while ago when I talked about Cars 2, but no, I mean it. I want to do a video a deep dive video going over many aspects of the Cars franchise, like the movies, the shorts, all that stuff. And so if that's something you want to see, please let me know. I want to do that, honestly. And yeah, Cars, I think, is honestly a great movie. It is a classic in my eye. Next up, we got Up, a movie that is looked upon very fondly, especially one specific sequence. You know the one I'm talking about, one of the opening things that we see, the montage of Ellie and Carl, their life, growing old together, all that stuff. Yeah, I bet you're thinking about it now. I bet you're crying right now. Hey, you know what? I am too, a little bit on the inside. I have to hide it while I'm on camera. But yeah, even just thinking about it makes me sad. But what about everything else after the movie that a lot of people also don't really seem to talk about? Well, I still really like the movie. I think a lot of it is great, I think it's a fun adventure. We see them Carl and Russell go off into the jungle essentially, while on their flying house. And then when they find Kevin, the snipe, all that stuff. And then when they meet up with that old man and the dogs and everything that can talk, but with their with their collars, it's all kind of wild, but it is fun. I don't think it's as strong as that opening has that opening sequence, but it is still enjoyable. It's fun. And even like near the end, when we're reaching the climax, when they're on the blimp and like Carl's got to save Russell, and he lets go of everything from the house so that he can fly higher, meaning that he's able to let go the past. Bro, it hits so well. Like honestly, I remember once I was watching a Patrick H. Willems video about Streets of Fire, I believe, and in it he mentioned a quote by George Lucas who said that like the most important like parts of a movie are like the first whatever so minutes and the last whatever so minutes. And I don't know if that's necessarily true, at least for every movie, but in this case, I don't know, I feel like it kind of does, because like I think like it starts off really strongly and it ends really strongly. I felt every emotion the movie wanted me to feel, even if I still had fun with all the middle stuff. I still didn't like love it or anything like that. You know, there's still some stuff that like is still a bit odd, like, you know, right? Like how is that old man that like Carl like, you know, like really liked as a kid like still alive now when he's like super old? I don't know, it's a bit strange. And Russell himself can also be like maybe not the funniest at times, like some of his jokes don't always land. But regardless, Up has still got a lot of great stuff in it. I still felt the emotions the movie wanted me to. And if other people said this like in their top 5 Pixar movies or top 10, I can see why, honestly, because it is very good. Inside Out 2, the most recent Pixar movie to have released at the time of recording this video. So right now I have only seen the movie once, unfortunately, back in theaters. It has not yet appeared on Disney Plus as of the time I'm recording it now. Maybe by the time this video releases it will be out on Disney Plus, but right now it isn't. So because I've only seen the movie once, I do want to say maybe take this ranking, like where it sits on the ranking, with a grain of salt, because it could change on rewatch. It could end up higher or even lower. I don't know, we'll see. But for right now, I could definitely say this was a good surprise of a movie. I remember going like, all right, I don't know what to expect, you know. So part of me like didn't think it was gonna be bad, but also kind of wasn't sure if it was gonna be like anything incredible, but I gave it a shot, and honestly, I think the movie turned out really good. Like, I had a great time with it, and I think there's so much quality stuff in it, you know. I like the new emotions they added, like anxiety, envy, even if she doesn't really express anything about herself that really feels like what envy is, but still, and, you know, embarrassment and ennui, they're great. It was fun seeing the characters from the first Inside Out back, and I really like what they did with Riley in this. I think they did a good job making her really interesting in this. Like, when I saw her go to that hockey camp, and like, you know, do all that stuff, like you know, abandon them essentially, and also doing all these things, I went like, no, Riley, why are you doing that? You know, I started to care for, like, you know, what her story was in this, and when she did something kind of cringy, I cringed. I was just like, oh girl, please don't do that. That is embarrassing. And like, you know, all the stuff inside her head with the emotions, I think is also good. Like, I like seeing like anxiety kind of grow to be like the antagonist of the film. That was really cool and interesting to watch, and seeing the emotions trying to get back and like, you know, figure out, oh, how do we get back and how do we help Riley and all that stuff. And I like how they introduced the concept of like core memories, like, you know, something that will, you know, help, like, you know, create what is gonna be like how you perceive yourself. That was a cool concept in this, and what they did with that was really cool. And, you know, there's a lot of really good creative stuff they do with this. And yeah, I just think, I don't know how else to say it. It's creative, and like you know, I think it's pretty good. I would say I think the emotional parts do not hit as much as I think the emotional parts in the first Inside Out do. But at the same time, I don't really feel like I have anything right now that makes me go like I dislike, or not dislike, but like this movie less or more than Inside Out. So that kind of gives a hint of what the next movie in this ranking is gonna be. So it could kind of flip-flop between which one I think right now is the better one, Inside Out or Inside Out 2. I kind of feel like equal about them. Even if I do think this one like does some things that like, you know, like I thought the first Inside Out did better, and some things Inside Out 1 I think Inside Out 2 did better. But, you know, like I said, whenever I rewatch this movie, my opinion could change. But right now, I would say Inside Out 2, definitely a good movie. And, you know, I'm glad it came out good. I'm also surprised to see how well it did at the box office. Like, I knew it was going to do well, but, like, it's the highest grossing animated film, like, of all time right now, not including inflation. So yeah, that was pretty wild to see. But yeah, Inside Out 2, definitely good. And you know something? I think it'd be really cool if I made some money. And if you want to give me some money to help me achieve that dream, then you can go ahead and like go over to my Patreon. That's right, guys. I have a Patreon now. Wow, yeah. Isn't that insane? Yeah, so I'm releasing it. It's out right now. Go, you know, you can go check out the tiers, you know, right? See what kind of perks you can get. I'm even gonna try to release some exclusive videos on Patreon, you know, for some of the people who, like, you know, would like to see that. But anyway, yeah, I just want to promote that. I got a Patreon now. Yeah. Ain't that epic? Yeah. Intermission. That's right. There's an intermission in this video because I chose the worst year to do a Pixar ranking because so much news regarding Pixar came out, both positive and negative, made me change the way I was gonna go about making the video. Like I mentioned this earlier in the video, but like, you know, throughout rewatching the movies or preparing to do the ranking, just news came out like the Pete Docter quote, which I showed off in the Lightyear video, the new movie announcements, Inside Out 2 being a huge success, and the laying off of a bunch of employees at Pixar, which I'll get into here. All this stuff that I was just like, it's important to mention. Some of it I have mentioned in the Lightyear video and in this video earlier, as you heard, as you saw, and some of it I will talk about more later on. However, in this intermission, I want to go over two things that just came out recently, literally yesterday, as I finished, filming the Inside Out 2 segment, and so I just have to go over it. First of all, Inside Out 2 was the hit Pixar needed, but the laid-off employees who crunched on it are still hurting. This is from IGN. This article basically says that the employees who worked on Inside Out 2, and after like they were laid off, they were not able to get their bonuses from working on the movie. And one employee even said that they removed their health insurance. Another employee said that like they weren't even able to go back into the office to get their things, as to not make things awkward with the employees that were still working there. And this is honestly terrible. I genuinely hate this. Like, I'm all for like animators being treated better, right? Like, I think like it's terrible how many studios will just kind of like underpay them and overwork them and all that stuff. And this is an example of that. And it sucks because like Inside Out 2, as we all know, is like a huge hit, and like it's the biggest, like the highest grossing animated film of all time right now. And seeing like that, and then you just see this, it's like, I mean, this would be terrible still if the movie wasn't successful, but like either way, you get what I mean. Like, it just sucks that they're like being like that this is happening to them, and like I just felt like I had to talk about this. And yeah, it's really terrible. So Pixar, Disney, please just give these guys their bonuses. They really deserve it. And yeah, like I said, Inside Out 2 made a lot of money. I'm sure you could spare some of that. But like, yeah, this honestly was really bad, and I just had to talk about it. The other thing was regarding a movie I had talked about a little while ago, and also Inside Out 2. Disney allegedly wanted Inside Out 2 to seem less gay after Lightyear's sex kiss controversy. That's right, Disney blamed the failure of Lightyear because of the kiss between the two women that was only in like one scene. It was like, what, 2 seconds in Lightyear? Yeah, they said that's the reason the movie failed, not because it was like boring or lame or anything like that. No. And because of this, they wanted they told the people working at for Inside Out 2 that to make Riley seem less gay, which like this is distracting. Sorry about that. Like, this and like here's the thing though, watching the movie, she still seems like the vibes were still there. I think I'm not the only one who noticed it, but like, yeah, that still kind of sucks that they probably could have been more gay, but like, yeah, it just sucks that like, Disney will often go like, oh yeah, we're all for LGBTQIA, representation, but then they do stuff like that, like blame a movie's failure on, a 2-second same-sex kiss scene when like the rest of the movie was clearly not enjoyed by everyone else, and then, give notes on that for Inside Out 2, yeah, so that's Disney, what the hell, but yeah, I felt like I had to mention this. Hopefully nothing else comes out in the rest of the filming of this Pixar ranking, because I don't want to have to add another intermission. Maybe if I do, if I necessarily have to, I hope it's for something positive and not like stupid things like this, like terrible things like this. So yeah, pay the employees and stop giving notes like that, and stop blaming your failures on like on gay people. Stop that. I mentioned this in the Inside Out 2 segment, but Inside Out 1 and Inside Out 2 I kind of feel pretty similarly about, and my opinion on where I would rank like these two movies, at least alongside each other, could change whenever I rewatch Inside Out 2. But for right now, I think I'll put Inside Out 1 just above Inside Out 2, because I think the emotional moments really hit here in this movie. They hit in Inside Out 2, absolutely they do, but I think they really hit here. I can just think of like so many moments where I got teary-eyed, or I just got like invested with these characters. And while I don't think I love it as much as I did as a kid, I think like, when I originally watched it as a kid, I just thought it was like super creative, and like just like it was like a message. The message in the movie was like honestly something I had to hear as a kid. Like just like the message that like that Joy learns in this movie, that it's important to let other emotions kind of take control, to like let Riley feel other things besides joy, because that's not the only emotion one can feel for a long time. And you know, it's good to let out a cry, it's good to feel sadness, that it's healthy, and like that's something I just needed to hear as a kid, honestly. And I still really love that that's in this movie. And I like the characters of joy and sadness, and even the others as well, like anger, fear, disgust. They don't really do as much as I wish they would, which is something I'm glad they do in Inside Out 2. They give them more screen time, but what they do here is still pretty important. Bing Bong himself, I definitely really, you know, got invested in one moment later on in the movie with him. You know the one I'm talking about. It got me teary-eyed. But throughout this rewatch, I kind of didn't really find them as funny as I did as a kid. You know, I just like, kind of thought like, oh yeah, I don't know. I don't really think, you know, he entirely worked for me, but you know, I still felt sad during that one moment, so I guess it did work to an extent, yeah. And I still love all the creativity in this movie, with like how they say like the mind works and all that stuff, you know. It's just incredible. I do think Inside Out 2 does some things that I kind of like a little bit more than than this movie, but at the same time, like I said, I feel like some things just hit more in this movie. Like, you know, like I think it also comes down to the fact that Inside Out 1 came out first, so I saw this work, you know, this like creativity for the first time in here, and Inside Out 2 is just like, oh yeah, I remember all this stuff, and they do have some inventive stuff in there that was made for that movie, but like still, Inside Out 1 did come out first, so it kind of like got the attention first. But still, you know, regardless, I think both these movies are still great in my opinion, you know, right? Like Inside Out 2 could even go up higher in the ranking whenever I rewatch it, I don't know, but for now, I think I'm good with where I place these in the ranking, and I still think Inside Out 1 is a really solid movie, really great. Luca is such a fantastic movie, man. Like anytime I watch it, it just puts a smile on my face. I just love the vibes that this movie has. This movie just has great vibes to it. I think about just how fun it is, like seeing Luca, Alberto, and Giulia like work together in this like Italian town to like do that big race thing, but also like, you know, they like you know, they also grow, like they become friends throughout it. It's like I love the pairs of Luca and Alberto, and Luca and Giulia. They're great. I like all the other side characters, like like the bully character. He's like funny. Like honestly, I like him. And like the dad, he's great. Or like Luca's parents, they're fun too. I love the designs of all the characters, from both the sea monsters and the humans. I like the sort of cartoony-esque designs they go for. It was like something that I hadn't really seen in a Pixar movie up to that point. And it's very reminiscent of La Luna, the Pixar short, which I believe was the same director as Luca, which is great. I like it. And man, the water in this movie looks amazing. Like I'm just gonna say it, I love water settings in like movies, TV shows, video games, especially in animation. And I will be praising some water stuff later in like some other Pixar movies to talk about later. You know, which if you know, you know. But here, like the water, I love the way it looks. I love like the water, like the little place where Luca and his family live underwater, and I love like seeing the ocean nearby the town. It's great. It's fantastic. And like I said, I just like the characters so much. The characters just really make this movie enjoyable, and the vibes. The movie just has great vibes. This movie gives me the same vibes that I get from watching some Studio Ghibli movies. Some of the more lower stakes ones where it's about like mostly people kind of like, you know, either like, you know, like these younger characters kind of like experiencing some things and like kind of growing as the movie goes. Like they you know, right, they grow as people. Things like Kiki's Delivery Service or Totoro or like Whisper of the Heart. This movie kind of gives me vibes, like a vibe like that. And I just think that's fantastic. I really like that. And Luca is just, like I said, it's a charming movie. It's sweet. So yeah, Luca, it's a great movie. And definitely, you know, one of my favorites from like the, you know, 2020s of like, from Pixar. Turning Red. For a while, this was actually my favorite Pixar movie from the 2020s. Right now, it's below another one, which I'll get into a bit later, but it is still a fantastic film that I just absolutely love so much. I have, like, for a while, ever since I first watched it. Turning Red, first of all, I just think it's so hilarious. Like, it is one of the funniest Pixar movies to me. Like, I laugh so hard at so many of the jokes and the visuals. It's, like, all just great stuff. And like the music is of course great. Like the Four Town stuff, don't get me wrong, that is great. Like, you know, all solid bangers from that band. Like just something about animated boy bands in like cartoons and movies, just like have like, they just have songs that absolutely slap, like total bangers. But also the score by Ludwig Göransson is so good. Like I genuinely think it's one of my favorite like scores from a Pixar film. And also I love the characters a lot in this. Like of course they all have like memorable moments, some really funny moments, and also some legit sincere moments in here and there. Like for example, like the main four friends, like, you know, May and her friends, I think are great. I just love that they allow these like teenage girls in this movie to like just be kind of cringy and dorky and like goofy. Like, I don't know what it is with a lot of animated shows and movies, or just like movies and shows in general, where they won't let their female characters kind of be weird and eccentric. Like, that's not the case for everything, but you notice it in a lot of things. And here they just are like that. They act like the way I think teenage girls would at that age. Like, you know, I knew kids like that at my school who acted like that. I had sisters who kind of acted like that a little bit too. And, you know, it's just like really fun to watch. And it's definitely going to be really relatable to, like, you know, kids like who watch this movie. And even if you don't relate to it, surprisingly, you could still enjoy a movie even if you don't relate to it. Isn't that wild? Isn't that insane? But yeah, I like that. And I like May's journey in this of like realizing she has this panda and her kind of like now allowing herself to figure out, you know, what she likes and what she can do outside of what like her mom expects from her, I mean. And like, you know, I think that's great. And like the mom kind of realizing she could like go a little bit and not feel like she needs to like, you know, right, have like May be like this like perfect girl for her, you know, right? Like she can let her like be her own person and stuff like that. I just think that's great. And the visuals, of course, fantastic. Like seeing like the panda, of course, the panda is really cute. There's also some other great moments, some beautifully striking moments, honestly, just really good stuff. And Turning Red is like, yeah, just like a really fun movie too. Like I have a great time. I'm always down to rewatch it. And yeah, it's just really good. It's Turning Red. But also it doesn't have a reference to 9/11. So actually I changed my mind. Put this on the bottom spot of the list. Finding Dory is a movie that I hadn't seen in quite a while until I did this rewatch for this ranking. I remember I watched it back in theaters when it first came out and a few times afterwards when I got the Blu-ray, and I remember really liking the movie a lot. However, you know, going into this rewatch, I didn't really remember that much. So I was going like, I think I remember this movie being good, so we'll see what it's, you know, what's going on with that. And then it turns out, I think this might actually be one of the most underrated Pixar movies, honestly. Like, this movie really is the best non-Toy Story sequel Pixar has done. It's a great follow-up to the first one, and like I just think it's great, you know, is what I'm saying. First of all, I just gotta talk about this. I love the water environments in this, like the ocean and the aquarium, like the different sections they go to. It's really great. Like I said this before, I'm a sucker for like cool looking water, you know, water settings and like stuff and like entertainment and media. And like the Finding Nemo movies, they just look amazing, the way they do the water and the sea creatures and the different environments they go to. Like especially just like how the credits are just like these moments of like the different places the characters went to, and it's just like the water. You just see the water, the environments, and like I like that a lot. It just looks cool. I don't know. I think they really go out, you know, right? They do a good job with the animation when it comes to like the water stuff in the Finding Nemo movies. It's just great. And here is no exception. I love it. Like I love the way, you know, some of the opening moments where we see the ocean and then like, or like in the first half of the movie, I mean, and then like when we see the aquarium, that's great too. I love that. I also love the different sea creatures we see in these, like the Destiny and the beluga whale, who I can't remember. He's voiced by the dad from like Modern Family, but you know, they're great. And Hank is honestly one of my favorite like characters from any one of these Pixar movies. Like he's great. I love that he's voiced by Ed O'Neill, I believe. Like, you know, he does a fantastic job with that voice, and I like he just like the way he moves is great. Like they do so many creative things with him, like his like with the fact that he's like an octopus or a septopus, to see he has 7 you know, tentacles, and they do a lot of creative stuff with that, with the way he moves and like, you know, camouflages into places. It's great. And I really loved watching the bonus feature on the Blu-ray that said like how he was like the most complicated character to figure out how to animate at the time for Pixar, and like he basically like almost broke the movie, like trying to figure out, okay, how do we get this to work? And I'm glad they figured it out because he looks great, and I love his like dynamic that he has with Dory, where he's kind of like grumpy at first and then they become friends. It's great. I love how like Dory works so well as a main character for this. Like you would like one would be, you know, like understandably worried if like the comedic relief sort of the first movie became like the main character for the next one, you know, Cars 2 stuff. But like, you know, with Dory, I think it really works because like her emotional ties with like, you know, trying to figure out like, you know what happened to her parents, her trying to piece all her memories together is like, I think is really interesting and good to follow. And like her kind-hearted nature just helps her, like, you know, right? And like her confidence just helps her get through different scenarios, and like, you know, I think that's great to follow. The stuff with Nemo and Marlin, they're not in the movie as much as I wish they were, but the moments that they have here are really good. We get to see like Marlin care for like Dory and like kind of go through a similar thing to what he had in the first one, where he gets like so worried that like, you know, he kind of like doesn't like have the most faith in like the person that he's trying to find, but he has to learn that he has to have faith in them, you know, right? And you know, it's good. It's a little bit of like a copy of what the first one did, but like I feel like it works, honestly. It works, I guess. And yeah, so overall the movie just has a lot of fantastic stuff in it. The only reason I can think of that it's like lower than the first one for me personally. It's just that the first one's just the OG. It's a classic. It's like one of my favorite Pixar movies. You'll see it soon. And also, like I said, the Marlins. I just kind of wish Marlon and Nemo, who were like important to the first one, were in here more. And like maybe it does, like I said, redo some of the things that were done in the first one. But it's all still good. This movie's still great. It's underrated, like I said. And yeah, this is definitely one that I want to rewatch more. And also, okay, one more thing. It's probably not important at all, but like this movie ends with a song called "Unforgettable" by Sia, and like it's like all right, I guess. Like I don't have any problems with the song other than the fact that it's sung by Sia. I don't like that. But like it also, I don't really know if it really fits the vibe of the movie. Like I know it's like called "Unforgettable," like it's you're unforgettable, but it sounds like more romantic, like something that would be like in a James Bond film rather than like a fun, family-friendly Pixar film. But yeah, I don't know. I just like that just distracted me when I watched it. By the end, I was just like, what? Why is this playing? But if you want to hear some more positive thoughts on Finding Dory, or just someone else's opinion who isn't mine because you hate my voice, then go ahead and listen to the guest that I brought on. That's right, we got a guest. We have Jake, aka the Glad and the Gladiator, talking about Finding Dory. Take it away, Jake.
Hiya folks, I'm Jake, and I preside over the YouTube channel known as The Glad and Gladiator, where I discuss both current and nostalgic animated media. But today I have been invited on by the wonderful David Definitive Edition to talk to you about why Finding Dory is one of my favourite Pixar movies. The sequel picks up 1 year after the events of Finding Nemo, this time focused around the forgetful blue tang who suddenly begins remembering stuff about her past, and journeys with Marlin and Nemo to the Marine Life Institute in California to try and reunite with her parents. Finding Dory is not only a great film, but might be my favourite Pixar sequel, though whenever that subject gets brought up, this film isn't, as though people simply forgot it came out, which is in stark contrast to other modern Pixar sequels which have been re-evaluated in recent years, for better or for worse. What impresses me most is Dory herself, which I find to be the best example of a side character taking centre stage because they build the story around her, focusing on her limitations and exploring the depths to her character that we only scratched the surface of in the original. Not taking away the humour of her character, but realistically demonstrating how her condition affects her and how she has to find workarounds to do certain things, which leads to some very harrowing moments. In contrast to Finding Nemo, the title of Finding Dory is more of a metaphor because it's about Dory finding herself and overcoming her daily struggles, taking this idea of living with disabilities that was used as a plot device in the original and making it the sole focus. Because of this more internal and psychological approach, the film is decidedly less grand than the original, foregoing the ever-present sense of danger for a sort of slower-paced mystery, though there are still plenty of fun action set pieces. Along the way, Dory encounters many new friends at the Marine Life Institute that make up one of the best supporting casts from Pixar in the 2010s, both in personality and how they contribute to the theme of the film, since like Dory, they are all disabled in some form. Destiny, voiced by Caitlin Olsen, is a nearsighted whale shark and Dory's childhood friend. Bailey, played by Ty Burrell, is a beluga who believes his sonar abilities don't work despite the doctors finding nothing wrong with him, with the reason for this being because of trauma, having originally been brought into the Marine Life Institute with a head injury. Then finally there's Hank, voiced by Ed O'Neill, a curmudgeon octopus who lost one of his tentacles. Hank essentially becomes the second protagonist of the film, with him accompanying Dory through the Marine Life Institute, and is easily one of my favourite Pixar characters simply from the way he's animated, which took 2 years just to model. Then there's Marlin and Nemo, who don't really do too much but act as great support for Dory. They lead their own subplot where they have to work with an absent-minded bird called Becky, which tries to say something about their relationship with Dory, but ultimately they are there to be rescued during the climax. But the focus of the film is Dory's search for her parents, inducing a series of flashbacks to Dory as a baby, which, while short, provide an honest depiction of parents with disabled children, leading to their reunion, which is one of those classic Pixar tearjerkers, especially with how expertly they build it up via foreshadowing, bringing us to the visuals and animation. As mentioned, Hank is the main standout for how expressive they make him and his movement, but beyond that, the visual flair of the film comes from the new environments, environments, exploring the Marine Life Institute, which is so vibrant and full of life. Then there's things like the texture of the sand, the water physics, the underwater lighting, which they developed a whole new software for just for this film. The climax of the film sees Dory and her new/old friends saving Marlin and Nemo from a truck heading to Cleveland. And this is where the film often lost people, who thought it was ridiculous and pushed their suspension of disbelief too far, especially with Dory and Hank driving the truck. To which I ask, is it really more far-fetched than this? While it is an outlandish premise, it does succeed at concluding all the ongoing character arcs and ties into the overall theme of the movie. Finding Dory is wonderful as both a standalone film and a sequel to one of the greatest cinematic achievements, expanding on the characters and themes of the original without ever feeling like a retread. It's a personal story about dealing with and overcoming your own limitations that is centered around one of the most charming and lovable characters ever created. If it's been a while since you last watched it or don't quite remember it, I strongly advise checking it out because this film is long overdue its flowers. Thanks to David for inviting me on, and I hope y'all enjoyed the rest of the video.
Wow, that was some really good words there, Jake. You know, you said it honestly probably better than I did because I'm bad at speaking. Anyway, on to the next movie. Soul from 2020, directed by Pete Docter, and this was the first Pixar movie to be released on Disney Plus, which then later led to Luca and Turning Red being released on Disney Plus, and that caused the whole debate like, oh man, this is terrible. And you're right, I agree. I did not like that either. I really wish these movies got theatrical releases, but the pandemic and then Disney being all like, nah, Pixar movies aren't good enough to go into theaters unless they're Lightyear apparently, and then whatnot. Yeah, it was a whole thing. Point is, yeah, I wish this got a theatrical release along with those other two, but right now we're talking about, Soul as it is right now, and I think the movie is really good. I remember when I first watched it, I kind of went like, that was pretty good. There was a lot that I really liked, but also I just didn't love it like other people seem to have. But as time went on and I rewatched it more and I started to understand it more, I was just like, I think this is actually a really amazing movie. Like, I genuinely love so much about it. So now I say that it's my favorite Pixar movie from the 2020s. There's a lot that I love. Like, I love the visuals in this, both in the real world and in the soul world, with the afterlife or the before life or whatever. I love the colors that are used in there, or how some of the people that work there are just these lines, these flat 2D characters, and that's great. And I love the way the real world looks. It's photorealistic, but also I love the designs of the characters. They still have some exaggerated features, but it's still really appealing to look at. And oh man, especially when they do the jazz, when they perform, the visuals there just are breathtaking. The art, the style that they go for, and the animation itself on both planes of existence, I guess, is really good. Man, I love Joe as a character. I think he was really interesting to follow. A man who's so obsessed with jazz that it's all he could think about, that to the point where it's sometimes a little bit of a bad thing, or that he kind of overlooks a bunch of other things about life. And there's I just love the messaging in this movie. It has a lot of different things to say about life and living and whatnot. And I just think it's really fun to really interesting to analyze. I remember I liked analyzing it when I first saw it. I was just wow, this is a really intellectual movie. I think one of the most intellectual from Pixar. Not to say that their movies are dumb or anything, but this is definitely up there in the more smart brain Pixar movies. And like I said, I like Joe. I like his relationship with 22, I believe. Tina Fey does a pretty good job performing the character, even if I do think not everything, some of the jokes that she say don't really land all the time. I think maybe there could have been a little bit of a better choice, but she still does good, I think. The main issues with the movie that I have are just I kind of wish we focus a little more on the jazz stuff. I don't know, I just like the jazz stuff in the movie so much that I kind of want to see a little bit more of that, and what we do get is pretty good. I don't entirely love the designs of the soul creatures. I don't know, they're a little cute, but also a little too simplistic in my mind. I don't know, maybe that's just a me thing. That's just a personal thing, I should say. It's just oh yeah, I don't know, I wish it could have been a little something different. And also, not to mention the fact that this is another Disney movie where there's a character, a main character of color, who for a large majority of the movie is not in their actual body and is instead in an animal body, which we see a bit too much of in some Disney movies. And also, not to mention the fact that when we do see Joe, a large majority of the time the Tina Fey's voice is coming out, which is a little funny, but at the same time it's oh yeah, this is for people who want more African American representation in movies. This is probably not the greatest out there. It's definitely not the worst. We've seen worse from Disney, but like, yeah, it is something that should be mentioned. But other than that, I do think what this movie does is super well. It's really well directed. I love the music in it. I love its themes, and it's just like really fun to think about. And honestly, this could even go up higher, honestly, if I were to rewatch it more. But for right now, I think it's pretty good. Near at the number 11. Oh wow, we're going into the top 10 now. Yes, we're in the top 10 now, which is not just my favorite Pixar movies, but also like just some of my favorite animated movies of all time. Some of my favorite movies in general of all time. And at number 10, we got the very first Pixar movie, Toy Story. I absolutely love the Toy Story movies. I think for a long time, I've known that it's probably my favorite animated movie franchise, but I think this rewatch really helped cement that, made me go like, oh man, I think this is my favorite animated movie franchise of all time. Spider-Verse might be a second one, we'll just have to see how that third one turns out. I really hope it's amazing, but for right now, it is Toy Story, and oh man, this first one is an absolute classic. I loved it as a kid. I loved all the Toy Story movies as a kid, but this one was like one of the most fun to watch. And while it doesn't have the same emotional impacts that I think the next Toy Story movies have, I definitely think this one has a lot of charm. It's incredibly funny. There's so many moments that make me laugh. There's so many like fun moments where like with the toys are just kind of like, or Woody and Buzz are just kind of doing different things like, oh hey, they're in the arcade. How are they gonna get out of this? And they're in the claw machine with all the little aliens. They're in Sid's house and like they have to get away from the dog, or like they like find all those other toys that are like mix match like creations that Sid made. All that stuff. Or like of course the rocket scene where they're like trying to get back to the moving van. Oh my god, just so many fun moments like that. And I love all the other characters like Woody and Buzz, great duo. I love how they went from rivals to friends. So great to see that. And then you got like the other toys like Ham, Mr. Potato Head, Bo Peep, Rex, Slinky, bro, great, some great supporting characters. And you got the music, of course. You got A Friend in Me, Randy Newman. Oh man, that's great stuff. I love it. And oh man, this movie's just a lot of fun, and it's just so charming, and it's just it's amazing. Just like it's so incredible to see just how Pixar was just like making a classic right off the bat as their first movie, and it's like the first one to like start like this amazing franchise that I really hope the next one, the Toy Story 5, is good. I have thoughts about that. I'll probably talk about it later. But like, yeah, Toy Story 1 is great. And something else that I really love about this movie is actually something that came out afterwards. Like for the 20th anniversary special, I remember ABC released a special called Toy Story to Infinity and Beyond, where the people behind the movie talked about the making of it. And something in that really inspired the way like I write. So in a sense, Toy Story kind of helped inspire the way I write my stories. Andrew Stanton in that special said, imagine you're never gonna have to show this to anyone and just put what you want to see, something along those lines. And he said that's usually like the right answer, or just something to get you out of a rut, out of a hole. And Andrew Stanton said this. And ever since I heard that as a kid, I just went, oh my god, that is incredible. And like I use that advice anytime I write one of my scripts or do another one of my projects, to like make it enjoyable for, to like actually work on, but also to help me like figure out what what I should put in it. Just put like, I just go ahead and just think, all right, this is like for me, what do I want to see out of this? And I just think that honestly helped me so much whenever like in my creative endeavors. And I just think it's a great piece of advice. And so yeah, so thank you to the Toy Story Infinity and Beyond special for teaching me that, and thank you to Toy Story in general for just being a amazing movie. I love it so much. Number 9, we got Toy Story 4, the most recent Toy Story movie at the time of this recording. Toy Story 5, I am feeling really scared about that one, honestly, but I'll get to that later. Toy Story 4, a movie that everyone went, why are we getting a Toy Story 4? Toy Story 3, I think we all agree, is like a perfect ending to the franchise that felt weird, like why are we getting a Toy Story 4 at all? And to this day, some people still don't like Toy Story 4 or feel like it's unnecessary. Me, I agree that I don't think it's a movie we really needed, but I'm kind of happy we got it because I ended up really loving it the more I watched it. Like, first time I watched it, I was just like, you know what, that was actually pretty good. But then the more I watched it, I was just like, oh my god, I think this is amazing, and it became like a 10 out of 10 for me. There's so much that I really like about it. Like, of course, I love Woody's personal journey in this. Like, it was so great seeing him kind of like sort of move on from the idea that he needs to find another kid, or that he could even have another Andy type relationship, and realizing, he can sort of have things for himself when he meets Bo Peep again, and like has fun like with trying to save Forky with her, and like and sees like what she's up to, helping lost toys and stuff, find kids of their own. That's great. And I really love that for Woody. Honestly, Woody's journey in this makes the movie for me something really special. It felt like a story that felt like, okay, I can see why you wanted to continue this. I'm sure the reason Disney wanted another Toy Story movie was for money, but seeing this felt like Pixar figured out what other story they can tell after 3. And you know, I think that's amazing, honestly. And the animation is amazing. Just like going from Toy Story 1 to this really showed just how much Pixar had changed and improved, and oh my god, it is breathtaking. So many great shots. And you know, there's a lot of great moments like in the antique shop or at the fair, or like, you know, in the van or the RV. I mean, that's great stuff. And you know, Forky, I really like Forky as a character. I think he's a lot of fun. I like what they do with Gabby. Like, she's starts off antagonistic, but later on you sort of feel for her, and you know, what they do with her eventually by the end, I think is really sweet. And seeing Bo Peep again, I think was great. I definitely was sad when she wasn't in 3, so seeing her in here and seeing her relationship with Woody, I think was really nice. And oh my god, this movie is just, I just really love a lot of it. The things that I don't really like are just things like, oh, some of the other characters felt kind of sidelined. You know, like Jesse's not really in the movie that much. Mr. Potato Head, Miss Potato Head, Rex, Slinky, whatnot. That, to be fair, some of those voice actors, like specifically Mr. Potato Head's voice actor, had passed away before, you know, I guess they could refit, before the release of this movie, and I guess they had to use pre-recorded lines, or unless he did do some lines. I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm wrong. Please let me know. The point is, yeah, I get that a lot of these voice actors are getting old, so you know, I don't know how much longer they can keep getting them for these Toy Story movies. But still, it just felt like, oh yeah, it would, you know, it's sad that a lot of them are just kind of sidelined when they felt really important to the Toy Story franchise. But you know, I still think this movie is really great, and I love so much about it. Toy Story 5, however, I'm just gonna get it out here. I heard the description for that movie about oh man, the technology is you know, kids are more into that than toys type of thing. And I don't know if that feels like something that I need a Toy Story movie to be about. That would be fine if it was a movie that came out right after the first one, or something that came out much earlier. But this is the 5th movie in a franchise that feels like it should have ended by now. 3 would have been a great ending. 4, honestly, if it had ended here, I would have been okay, you know what, we probably didn't need that, but I'm glad we got it, so we can stop now. But no, we're getting that movie. And look, Andrew Stanton's directing it, and Toy Story 4 surprised me. I'm kind of hoping the same will happen with this, where they're okay, Andrew Stanton, I trust him. Toy Story 5, maybe I could be surprised, but I hear that plot description, it sounds more like it should be a special instead of a movie. But I don't know, I'm just very worried about that movie, so if that movie's bad, I'll be very sad. But for now, I'm glad that we got 4 great Toy Story movies, and I'm excited to talk about the other 2 later. Finding Nemo from 2003. This is what I mean when I said you know, the movies from 2001 to 2010 are peak Pixar, or you know, just the best quality, consistent quality from Pixar, where you're gonna see a bunch of those movies in this top 10, and that includes Finding Nemo. Oh man, this movie is so great. I loved it ever since I was a kid. I watched it a lot as a kid, and oh man, it just has my heart. There's just so much I love about it. I mentioned this before, the water visuals in these movies, the Finding Nemo movies, is so good. I absolutely love the way they make the ocean environments look, and they're so good that they had to make the end credits just basically stills of the different environments that we saw, and it just I just love that, honestly. While you know, Beyond the Sea starts playing, that's great. I love that. And you know, there's just so many great moments in here. Of course, seeing Marlin and Dory go on their quest to save Nemo, and they you know, all the different locations, all the set pieces they go to are just amazing. When they have to meet with Bruce and the shark and the other sharks that are vegans who don't eat fish, that's a fun moment. When they meet the sea turtles, Crush and you know, and Squirt, and they're you know, doing the wave thing, that's amazing. I love that. The whale scene, that's great. Oh, the jellyfish scene looks absolutely stunning. I love it so much, and they have a great dynamic. They're great friends, and just seeing how, you know, that he's initially annoyed by her, but you know, they become friends, and she actually feels you know, he's actually helping her as well, and she starts to care so much. It's just amazing. I love that. And then of course Nemo's journey, of course, where he's at first kind of annoyed by his dad, but then when he's on his own, he starts to really miss him, but he also kind of grows confidence in himself to learn that you know, oh, he can do things on his own, you know, right? He, you know, it's just great. And his whole with the tank gang, of course, is great. You gotta love those characters too, the Starfish, Pearl, the other ones whose names I don't remember, but you know, the yellow one, purple one, the blue one, and of course the Willem Dafoe fish. He's great, the one with the scar. I love that. You know, oh yeah, and the pufferfish one. They're great. I love their moments together. And then, oh man, it's great. And like, yeah, I just like, whenever I talk about this, I just talk about like my favorite moments, like all those set pieces and all those characters, because they're great. I just love this movie so much because I love these like set pieces and characters and like the way the movie looks. Like, it really was amazing. Like, for 2003, this looks incredible, and honestly still one of my favorite looking Pixar movies. Just, I'm a sucker for like cool looking ocean environments. And yeah, it's a classic, you know, it's the OG, which is why I put it above Finding Dory, even though I still think that movie's amazing. And apparently, I think I heard this, if I'm wrong, please let me know, but I guess we're going to be getting a third movie in the Finding Nemo franchise. Huh, that's interesting. This one I'm not actually that opposed to as some of the other ones. Okay, I'm actually more opposed to Toy Story 5 than I am the other ones, but like, this is the one that I'm going like, you know what, yeah, sure, I'd like to see that, you know? Finding Dory's, you know, I think is really good, and so maybe Finding Nemo 3 could be great. Maybe it could be about Marlin this time. Finding Marlin, I'd watch that, I think that'd be great. But like, yeah, however that turns out, I hope it's as good as these two movies, because yeah, Finding Nemo is, you know, is a really great movie. It's a classic in my eye, yeah. Monsters Inc., the movie that I really feel started the peak Pixar era, 2001 to 2010. And this Monsters Inc. is a fantastic movie. I loved it as a kid. I still love it now. It is one of the funniest Pixar movies. It is probably the funniest Pixar movie, if we're being honest. It's great. I love so much about it. Like, the duo of Mike and Sully, Billy Crystal and John Goodman, they're great. I love them so much. They're like the best friend duo in any Pixar movie. Like, maybe even better than Woody and Buzz? Ooh, maybe. But like, yes, I love them so much. They're great. I love the world that this movie takes place in, where it's like this like world of monsters, and they all have like really creative and fun designs, and like they use doors in, like, they have like this factory where they use doors, closet doors, to go into the human world in order to scare children, in order to power their cities. Bro, that's so much fun. I love that. That's so creative and fun and really inventive. And you know, there's a lot that I love. Like I said, like the characters are great. I also like some of the other ones, like Randall, the rival, the villain, one of the antagonists. He's great. Waternoose, who like is like a twist villain. You've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about, where he starts out kind of like, oh, you know, like just the old guy who works there, who really, you know, right, who's you kind of love, but then he turns out to be a villain who says he would kidnap children in order to save like this factory. You know, that's kind of weird, Waternoose. I feel like I should report you for saying that, but like, you know, still, you know, when it's a twist villain that works, honestly, is what I'm saying. And oh man, there's so many great lines in here that I absolutely love. Like, and of course, Boo, the little girl that like accidentally gets into the monster world and like befriends Sully befriends. Their dynamic is so cute, seeing him realize that, like, oh man, maybe scaring children isn't the way. Maybe there's another option, and like seeing like how, you know, he, like, you know, right, just the little friendship that he grows with her, and like how much he cares so much. I think it's really great. It's so cute, honestly. I love it. And like the final moments where, like, you know, spoilers, I guess you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about, when he has to say goodbye, bro. It like. Bro, it hits like towards the end. But in the actual final moments, when he opens the door and we don't see if, like, you know, how she looks like now. She could be older, she could still be the same age, I don't know. But it just ends there. I'm like, oh, bro, it's so amazing. Like, it gets me so much. And like, honestly, it's almost to the point where like I'm kind of okay not getting a proper Monsters Inc. 2. Like, we got Monsters University, but I'm kind of okay not getting a Monsters Inc. 2, because I don't know if I really want to see what he sees at the end when he opens that door by the end, you know, right? I think I'm okay just having it end there. And like, you know, I'm also okay just having that show, Monsters at Work, you know, right? I've seen the first season. I think it's pretty good. Should I watch the second season? Is that one good? I don't know. But anyway, yes, I think that's great. And I love the score by like Randy Newman does the score for quite a few Pixar movies, this one included. And I think this is my favorite of his. Like, as much as I love his Toy Story scores, I love him so much. If he doesn't return for 5, I will probably riot. I think this is like my favorite sounding of his, if I'm being honest. It's so great. Like, you got the opening themes. That's great. I love that so much. And like, I just love it so much. It's a great, like, fun sounds. And like, this movie is just like so much fun to watch. It's super sweet to watch. It's super like the world and the characters are like super, like, you know, fun and inventive and the creative. It's just great. It's just Monsters Inc. It's a classic. I love it so much. It's great. Anyway,
I have something to say about this film.
Whoa.
Don't you know that I'm a terrifying creature that can transport through closet to closet? Like the monsters in Monsters Inc.? So, naturally, I too have an interesting perspective on this film.
Were you just listening to me the whole time? Like, what?
Yes, but that doesn't matter. Don't judge me. Now, depending on where I'm trying to start here with this whole thing, I'd like to point out the quick moment of Mike trying to get into his car. Now, it's a quick moment, sure. It's like, it's barely about 10 seconds. I think it explains enough in some way. Mike trying to get into his car, slowly pulling him back, saying there has been low on power recently. Which, for me, that feels natural enough for this. And not to mention, you do have another scene of it later. So there's a newspaper on there somewhere that explains the exact same thing. It gives him a bit more detail on that. And also, it shows a bit more of what these characters are like. You have Mike, who's looking for the quickest way out, like him trying to get into his car so he can get to work faster. And Sully, who looks a bit more, thinks about it a bit more. You know what I mean? He tries to figure like what's best for other people in this case, I suppose. I guess that is what I'm trying to get across here. And again, the dialogue here is very natural for them. You could totally believe that these two are lifelong friends, despite what the prequel says. And they're definitely up there. They're definitely up there with best friend levels, up with Woody and Buzz from Toy Story. You believe their chemistry, their friendship, you know? Feels nice. And that's not what we'll hear. It turns out, during this whole scene, they're kind of like the locals here, like people's champ, I suppose. I'm not sure how you mortals put it or anything, but it feels like the right way of putting it. Just like, people know them, they respect them, they know that they're on the edge of cutting to the scare record of theirs. And they pretty much praise them nonetheless. You know what I mean? They get free fruit from it, and you can't argue with that. Through this whole scene, you pretty much get the scale and size of what this monstropolis has to offer. Basically the residents of this place. On one end, you do have your normal monsters with fur, scales, anything really. And then you have one with more unique details to them. Some of them could breathe fire, some of them are giants. Some of them are completely made of gelatin or slime or anything like that. Now, as I don't want to spend my time gasping on this scene alone, so I'll just cut to the rest of it. The soundtrack itself, now hearing it again, it's actually got nice in the ears. It has a bit of an upbeat tempo to it, which, considering the film based on monsters, you know, things that you're surrounded by your whole life, it doesn't really seem that it would be nice to hear that, like you would associate with the theme of monsters, but it does, and it works. I agree with that. But we will get public or listening to it instead. Now, I suppose I should make this brief now. I don't want to waste your time with these other flicks. So, let's get to it. Right. The acting, wonderful. I do really like that relationship Sully has with Luca. It's a very word for me, but it's sweet. I agree. Just everything else in this film, it just works. It's really clever and stuff like that. It's just a perfect movie. That's all I can say. And with that said, I suppose that is all I can say. I hope you appreciate this. Now, if you excuse me, I'm going to go enjoy the rest of my vacation. You better have water here, man. Oh. Not everyone here drinks blood, you know.
Okay, I guess that was Al Sangui's thoughts on Monsters Inc. Yeah, so on to the next movie. Coco is a movie that means so much to me. It has a really special place in my heart, and it's one of my favorites from the 2010s era of Pixar. There's just so much I really like about it. Like, I'm Hispanic, so, you know, of course, I really like a movie that, like, has, like, really interesting or good representation of Mexican culture and, you know, people. And this definitely does, exploring, like, the tradition of Dia de los Muertos and seeing just the land of the dead, you know, how that looks. I absolutely love the visuals in that world when you see the alebrijes and, you know, just, like, the different buildings and stuff. And, oh my God, it's just so good. I like the designs of the skeletons as well. The skeletons, they look really great, and I love the animation on them. And there's a lot of great character moments in this movie that I really love. Like, I like seeing Miguel's journey of, like, you know, wanting to be like a musician so badly, and like him realizing, oh, how much that the concept of music has kind of hurt the family, but also that there was a bit more to it, and also realizing how he can change things, you know, right? So that he can have both the family and music. He doesn't need to choose both. I think that's really great. And then just seeing like him learn more about his family through, while basically meeting his old ancestors in the you know, in the land of the dead, I think is great. I like his like relationship with Hector, and you know, I think the reveal with him, I think, is really good. Like, honestly, almost all of the reveals in this movie, I think all of them basically work for me. Like, it has like the twist villain, which would usually be like annoying in most movies, but here I think it honestly really works. And the reveal with Hector, I think, is really good. And then, you know, all the stuff with when Mama Coco, oh my god, bro. Yeah, if you know the scene, you know what I'm talking about. Oh man, it gets me teary-eyed every time I watch it. While I don't think I full-on cry as much as I used to when I first watched it, I think, yeah, no, I still feel something in my heart. I'm like, bro, don't cry, just, you know, gotta man down. It's, you know, great stuff. And yeah, just the emotion throughout the movie, I think, really works, which makes it like a top-tier Pixar movie for me. Like, honestly, I felt every emotion the movie wanted me to. And the music, I really like the music, especially the songs, the original songs written for this. Like, you know, I mean, obviously I have to mention Remember Me, because that's a tearjerker song right there. But also all the other ones, like Poco Loco and La Llorona, which is not an original song for this. It existed prior, but I still like the way it's sung. And another reason why I really love this movie is that, honestly, it kind of helped me realize something a little bit about myself. Like, as a kid, like, I've always been Hispanic. I think I should make that clear. But like, it's something like you know, that aspect of my life is not something that I was like the most connected to. Like, I spoke Spanish every now and then, but you know, then I kind of stopped, and like, it's only like occasionally once in a while when I meet with family members. But then after I watched this movie and I relearned, you know, things about Mexican culture that honestly I had forgotten or maybe never even learned about, it kind of made me want to explore more of that, you know, aspect of my life. And now I've been trying to speak more Spanish in like my life, and I might introduce it more in, you know, in videos. I don't know, we'll see. But like, yeah, it's just, you know, so thank you, Coco, for making me realize that, you know, that's something I should be proud of, something, you know, that I should really care about. And yes, I am aware that this movie has some similarities to another movie, The Book of Life, which is also a really good movie in its own right. I definitely want to do a video on that someday. But, you know, I think it's different enough that, like, I feel like, you know, like, it's like, it's not really worth mentioning, but, like, someone might want me to, so I mentioned it right there. Yeah. But, like, yeah, Coco, I think, is a fantastic movie, and I just love it so much. It's great. Toy Story 2, the first sequel from Pixar, and another one where they just knocked it out of the park when it comes to a movie, like just making an absolute classic. Like, after A Bug's Life came out, it was considered good, but some people were wondering, is Pixar a one-hit wonder? Could they only really make one great movie, Toy Story 1? And they were all like, no, shut up, we can make another good one. And it was Toy Story 2, and man, I absolutely love this movie so much. It absolutely did a great job. It's like one of the best sequels ever made. It's, instead of just like repeating the plot for the first one, or even just doing it with like, oh, they get jealous of a new toy or something, they actually really do something really interesting and kind of explore the themes of like what it's like to be a toy in the Toy Story universe. We get to see like Woody explore the ideas of like, yeah, but you know, Andy's a kid and he's gonna grow up. What does that mean for me? And so we see his like, you know, right, see that when like he accidentally like you know, ends up like in like a yard sale, and he's taken by this collector of like Woody memorabilia. Apparently we learned that Woody is like you know, like part of some famous show. And of course we get Pete, you know, Stinky Pete, we get Jessie and Bullseye. You know, Jessie and Bullseye, especially iconic characters of the Toy Story franchise, and they're introduced here. That's amazing. And we get to see, you know, his dynamic with them, and him kind of see this other side like that he didn't know, like, oh man, he's like a famous toy. And like he realizes he, you know, he could live on forever in this way, or he could live on with you know, Andy for a temporary amount of time, because, you know, right, he's gonna get older. He doesn't know what that future entails once he's like done playing with toys and whatnot, which I think is such an interesting thing to explore with, you know, with this. Like, honestly, like, it just like adds so much more depth to the Toy Story universe, to the Toy Story characters. And of course I gotta mention Buzz and like the other toys like Ham, Mr. Potato Head, Slinky, and Rex, them going out to save Woody. Like, this I think really helps like make those characters feel like, oh yeah, like so much fun to watch, you know, right? Not just like, oh, side characters that were there for the first one. Like, no, now they have more important roles here, or they have always had important roles, but like they have extra important roles now, as like, so we get to see their dynamics together, and really helps, you know, right, make this cast feel like so much more amazing. And they're great, and there's a lot of great moments with them when they're at the toy store and whatnot. And then of course there's the other Buzz, the Zurg. I'm just like saying things that I like about these movies. Like, the Toy Story movies just have some of my favorite moments for movies in general. And yeah, Toy Story 2, it's one of the greatest sequels ever made. And honestly, with how well they handle like the themes they explore, and these are like the, you know, kind of like the depths that they explore with the characters of Woody and whatnot. It like, honestly, I think this is probably the best Toy Story movie. However, it is not my favorite. We'll get to that later. WALL-E is one of the greatest animated movies ever made in my opinion, and this rewatch really cemented that for me because I've loved this movie for such a long time. I loved it a lot as a kid, but this time around, I don't know, it just really felt like it really hit so much. Like I love almost everything about this movie. It just works on like so many levels, I think. And I when I rewatched it, I was just like, I love this movie so much. I gotta get that Criterion Blu-ray that I've been wanting for a while now. The reason I initially made a Criterion account, but I never actually bought the movie, but like I finally did, and then I rewatched it again. I rewatched it twice in this ranking, honestly, because it's just that amazing. I love it so much. And that Criterion Blu-ray and all the extra features, and hearing Andrew Stanton, the director of this movie, talk about the movie really helped, like, you know, realize just what parts of this movie I think really work. Like, of course, all the parts that take place on Earth in the beginning, where it's like mostly like silent, like visual storytelling with a few beeps and boops and some words from even WALL-E, but it's mostly just visual storytelling, I think is great. Honestly, like, it could work on as a movie on its own. I think if that was just like the whole movie, but even the Axiom stuff in space, I think is also great. I love all the stuff there, even if like the representations of like how humans have become in the future could be seen as a, you know, possibly fatphobic, which fair, but I still think it's good commentary, you know, right? That we can't rely on technology and that we got to get our crap together, guys, in order to make the planet good. Like, I just love the environmentalist theming about this, you know, from this movie. Like, I think that's an important message. I hate that it's still relevant now, because it shows that we've shown no progress as a society, as a civilization, which, guys, again, we need to get our crap together. But, you know, I definitely think it's an important message to send, like, you know, right? Showing, like, hey, what our future could become if we don't, like I said, get our crap together. And, of course, the romance between WALL-E and Eve is so good. It's so precious. I wish I had what they have, but it is legit so amazing to watch. Like, you know, like, see how like he falls for her and then she eventually falls for him, and then, you know, the lengths they would go to, like, you know, be with each other is great. I love it so much. And I also love that WALL-E is like the accidental savior of the civilization. Like, he goes in just because he like really likes Eve and like just wants to be with her, but then throughout this whole journey, he like also kind of helps humanity get back to Earth and, like, you know, basically help, you know, right, bring back civilization to Earth. And it's like, oh, WALL-E, you know, right? He's just that amazing. I love him so much. And yeah, you know, I just think it's amazing, and it's a movie that I'm honestly gonna think about more and more as time goes on, and I still have thought a lot about it ever since, like, I watched it as a kid. And yeah, I'm glad I have the Criterion Blu-ray. Of all the Pixar movies that I feel like could definitely, like, you know, like, I could definitely see getting a Criterion Blu-ray, WALL-E is the one that I feel is one of the most fitting for that, if that makes any sense. Also Ratatouille, which I'll get to it. But, like, yeah, WALL-E is an amazing movie, and yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's just amazing. Toy Story 2 is what I said I believe is the best Toy Story movie, from like the way it tells its story and like how it was the first movie in the franchise to really go more deep into like how the toys actually are affected by the idea of, like, you know, their kids growing up, you know, right, and not wanting them anymore, which I think was a really good exploration route to go with for the Toy Story franchise. But I think Toy Story 3 is my personal favorite because whenever I think about what my favorite moments from the Toy Story franchise are, they mostly come from this movie. I love like the breakout scene where they're like trying to get out of Sunnyside, or like I really like get emotional during the moments where they're like in the fire and they think they're gonna, like, you know, not make it out, and they hold hands knowing they at least have each other. They're gonna go down together. I love the final moments of the movie where they say goodbye to Andy, you know, right? It's just so amazing, and like, oh my god, it gets me teary-eyed every time. Like, I think this, I did actually cry rewatching this. I always cry whenever I watch this movie. And, you know, I just think so many moments in this movie get me emotional. This is the Toy Story movie that gets me the most emotional, that gets me the most invested, because I just love these characters so much. And yeah, if the franchise had ended here, this would have been an amazing conclusion. And while I love 4, don't get me wrong, and while I'm cautiously optimistic for 5, please be good, I think 3 is my favorite and is the best conclusion to this franchise could ever have, honestly. And there's so many moments I could go on and on about this movie, so much so that, like, you know, I kind of want to do a Toy Story retrospective as well. Like I said, I want to do a Cars retrospective. I think I want to do a Toy Story one too. Let me know if that's something you want to see. But yeah, 3 is my favorite Toy Story movie, and it's, you know, it's one of my favorite Pixar movies. Number 1 and number 2 were actually really hard to figure out. I was just like between these two choices, going like, oh, it could be either one. They're both Brad Bird directed films, so that should give a clear indication of what number 1's gonna be. But for number 2, I decided to put Ratatouille, directed by Brad Bird from 2007. Honestly, an amazing movie. One of the best movies I've ever seen in my life. This is another WALL-E situation where I watched it as a kid a lot, but as I've gotten old, you know, I really loved it as well. But as I've gotten older, I've learned to really appreciate so much about how well crafted it is, and just how just so much of it is like so much more like deep. I don't know how to say it without sounding kind of cringe, but like so much more deeper than one would expect. Like you hear the plot of the movie, like, oh, it's about a rat who wants to cook, but everyone believes he can't do it because he's like a disgusting rat. Like rats don't cook; they should stay outside of the kitchen. But you know, he shows that he can cook. You hear that, and it kind of seems like in the wrong hands, like it kind of come off as like a goofy, silly kids movie, like in the same lane as something like Turbo or something. But with the direction of Brad Bird and of course the amazing team he has behind him with this movie, they were able to tell something that honestly feels like one of the most sophisticated and interesting like stories I've heard in a movie. Honestly, something that has something really interesting to say about art and like the artist and like what goes into art and the, you know, the people who make it, and ego, not the character ego, but like the concept of ego and how that can affect oneself. I think it's really good. I like what they do with Remy, you know, right? He has like the whole like, oh, he wants to cook, but like, you know, they say he can't, and then seeing him kind of explore like how he can, but also like seeing like, you know, his work is not always appreciated, at least not for like on his side, because, you know, right, like Linguini kind of like, he kind of, the ego kind of gets into his head and he goes like, no, you just like help me do this, but like I'm the face of it all. And then like him kind of regretting that as well, and then like, you know, Remy also the ego kind of getting to his head and kind of betraying Linguini a little bit when he like lets the other rats in like into the restaurant and kind of betraying his trust. It's so good. And then what they do with ego as well, like he kind of comes off, he is like the initial antagonist, but then what they do with him and him essentially giving off like the main message of the movie by the end of it, saying that like, hey, art, you know, there's a lot to it, there's a lot that goes into it, especially when you know the artist as well, is just like, oh my god, it's so great. And you know, when in art I mean like the food, but you know, the food is like the art in this movie. I think it works so well. And like, there's so much more I could say, but a lot of the things that I want to say are things that people have already said before. Like, you know, like for example, I wanted to say that like, oh, the way the movie is structured, like the story is structured, kind of gives off something like you would see like in an indie film more so than like, you know, a mainstream animated film, which is really great. Or like that the movie gives off the vibes of like, oh, something that was made with adults in mind first, and then like just happened to be somewhat like, you know, suitable for children to watch. Like all that stuff is so true. And anytime I watch this movie, I get hungry because the food looks amazing in this. But yeah, I love so much about it. It is honestly an incredibly smart movie and one of Pixar's best. And I love it so much. But yeah, it's just great. And now, time to go to number 1. But first, I'm actually feeling pretty hungry. So I'm gonna go get some food really quickly. I'll be right back. Whoa!
Hey!
Aren't you that crazy Godzilla fan from the Godzilla 1998 video? Go check that out, by the way.
I heard you were talking about Ratatouille, and I just want to say that is my #1 pick for a Godzilla crossover film. It would be phenomenal. 18 parts, multiple carry arcs, Remy, Godzilla, food, destruction of Tokyo. Mwah, chef's kiss.
How did you get in here?
I just wanted to say that Ratatouille is a masterpiece of cinema, just like Godzilla, in the sense that it follows a unique character that brings forth humanity in other humans while not being human. It focuses on discovery and improving yourself and talent as well, but also coming to terms with talent and pursuing passion. Much like how Godzilla discovers his talent and passion for destroying cities.
That's really interesting and all, but also like you broke into my apartment. I feel like I should ask you to leave now. So yeah, can you leave now?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. But first, let me share with you my first draft for my Godzilla x Remy fanfic, Gojira in Paris.
No, I'm fine. Yeah, I can listen to that some other time. Just please leave. And at number 1, we have The Incredibles, a movie that I loved so much as a kid. I still love it now. It is just an amazing film, and this is definitely not the first Pixar ranking list that will have The Incredibles at number 1. It definitely won't be the last, but I just gotta say, man, this movie, I love it so much. I really do. I really do. There's so much stuff that works about it. It's the same thing that I said with Ratatouille, where it feels something that was like, oh, this kind of has a plot that you would see, like, you know, that you could see being turned into like a silly, goofy kids film that, you know, again, done in the wrong hands, could turn out to be just like, kind of fine, but children will enjoy. But they find an interesting way to make this like actually like legitimately interesting and somewhat sophisticated. This is like a superhero story, but they kind of explore like this world where like, oh, superheroes have been outlawed, and this one guy is basically going through his midlife crisis. Like, now that he has a family, he should be happy with this, but like he misses those days, and so he gets to relive those a little bit. But then we see what kind of problems that causes when he like leaves the family for a bit, and then they find out, and then, you know, we see like the marriage kind of go like, oh man, that's, you know, this is kind of putting a strain on the marriage a bit, and like you want to see them, you know, right? You want to see them work it out by the end. It works so well. Like, the family drama legitimately is really good in this. I love it so much. I love Bob's like journey throughout this movie, of him essentially going through a midlife crisis, the superhero version of it at least. And, you know, I think that's great. And like, oh man, it's so good. So good. And the action, I just gotta say, the action in this movie is incredible. This was the first, not the first time Pixar has animated humans, but it was the first time they really had to consider like, oh man, the anatomy. And I just mentioned like all the you know, the powers that they have. They had to really like hone in on like the fact that, oh yeah, these are people. Since like before then, the humans were more like afterthoughts. It's like you know, the characters were always like, oh, bugs, or like toys, or monsters. But like here it's like, nope, this is their first time fully animating a movie mostly centered around humans, and I think they did a great job. I love it so much. And the music, oh my god, The Incredibles might just have my favorite score from any movie ever. Michael Giacchino's score in this is amazing. Like, you got the opening like, you know, right? It sounds much better than what I just did, but it's like that. And of course the end credits. I could just go on and on. I'm not going to, because everything I just did was cringe. But yes, I love the music so much. It's my favorite score from any movie ever. And like I said before, the action is great. I think they did a great job with all the action scenes. Like, there's just so many fun moments that I could just remember. Like, oh, like when Dash is running over the water while he's like being chased by those bad guys with the helicopters, or like when they're fighting the robot, is so good. And then like, you know, the chase scene with like Violet and Dash, and like she's like doing the force field and he's like running, that's great. Or Bob, like, you know, punching things, or Elastigirl sneaking in to like the place where Bob is, and like, you know, she's doing all the stretchy stuff. It's like, it's so good. I love it so much. I'm a big fan of superheroes, so, you know, of course, it's something up my alley. But like I said, I genuinely love the story too, you know, right? It essentially is a midlife crisis story, but with a superhero touch to it. Again, it feels something that, like what I said with Ratatouille, was something that felt like it was like made with adults in mind, but kids just is something that was actually somewhat suitable for kids. And there were some things that just kind of flew over my head, honestly, like the idea that like, oh yeah, this is a story where like a wife kind of thinks that her husband's cheating on her or something, or like the talk of the, you know, the like, I didn't know why that guy was jumping off the building. I just thought he accidentally fell or something. But like, no, I didn't know that. That was like, that's what that was supposed to be. And the fact that that was something that was mentioned in a Disney movie of all things is just insane. I could go on and on, but like The Incredibles is, I just love it so much. It's my favorite Pixar film. It's one of my favorite animated films ever made. It's one of my favorite films ever made. And Incredibles 3, you know, I don't know how that's gonna turn out, but I hope it's good. But will it ever, you know, be as good as this? I probably not, because The Incredibles is a masterpiece of a film. You could even say The Incredibles is pretty good. Yeah, we're at the end now. That is my ranking of the Pixar films. My opinion could possibly change whenever I rewatch these movies, you know, but for right now, I think, yeah, this is how I feel. This is how I would rank all of them. And I don't know how long this video ended up being. I hope it doesn't become too hard to export, because that would be a nightmare. But like, hopefully by the time you're seeing this, that everything turned out well. And I'm glad you stayed this long to watch it. I'm sorry it took so long to get this video out, but hey, this was really fun. I had such a great time rewatching all these movies. These were movies that I had seen before, some movies that I've grown up with and like have loved. Some of my favorite movies ever made are in this list. And ultimately, I don't even think there's like a movie that I ended up really hating or liking any less than the last time I watched it. Well, except maybe Lightyear, but even that one I don't hate. But I still don't like it. I think it's a pretty bad movie. But like honestly, I don't really think there's like a movie that like I said I would hate downright. And it was amazing rewatching some movies that I've absolutely loved, or movies I haven't seen in quite a while. This was just a really fun list to do. And yeah, let me know what some of your favorite Pixar movies are, and if you want to see me do a ranking for any other animated movie studios out there. Like, I kind of want to do Studio Ghibli next. I think that'd be really fun. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and yeah, I'm very tired now, so I don't know how to end video.